Hello, and welcome to Making Creativity Pay, the podcast where we talk to people in creative industries about how they promote and market their work. I'm Dan Barnett. On this episode I spoke with Giles Gear, founder of Giddy Aunt Comedy and also founder of the Cheerful Earful Podcast Festival, which starts in the UK on the 12th of October. We talk about how the festival came about, the importance of building a community, and also other parts of Giddy Aunt Comedy, including the fantastically named Golden Lobes, which is a podcast awards evening, which is representation from indie podcasters through to national giants. We also talk about the range of live events Giddy Aunt has set up, including Louis Theroux, Brian Blessed, and many more. I started by asking Giles to give a quick introduction about himself.
So my name's Giles. I'm the founder of Cheerful Earful, which started off as a podcast festival back in 2022. It's a bit more than that now, but not too much more than that. It's our fourth year, if you're listening to this in 2025, of doing the festival. It started as sort of 3-4 days in some London pubs, and we're very lucky now that it is still a festival of funny podcasts, but we've got 8-9 days in London, 3 days in Melbourne, and 3 days in New York this year for the first time as well. So it's a real chance to see your favourite funny podcasts. Now that might be out and out comedy ones, and there's also ones where the genre might not be comedy but they are still funny or entertaining. So we had like Joe Marler did his first live show as part of the festival a couple of years ago, or some podcasts that are perhaps more straight down the line, but still raise a smile. And we're really proud that it's free for all performers. You know, they don't have to pay any money to be part of it. We try and do as generous a ticket split as possible. And we also, our bread and butter is keeping it open and giving a platform for indie podcasters, first-time performers and all that kind of thing. Whilst we do have some sort of big boy headliners, we're never just going to pivot and just do big boy headliners, because what's the point? That's not that fun. And so it's a really lovely, we sort of say global but grassroots community. Happens every October over the course of the month in different venues in 3 different territories now in the world. And then we also might chat about it later, but we also launched a spin-off awards earlier in 2025 called the Golden Lobes. We're still waiting for a cease and desist from the Golden Globes. Nothing yet, so I think fingers crossed we're okay as well. But that was just to also just celebrate funny podcasts and podcasters and just have a bit of a laugh as well.
So yes, you said you've been going since 2022. What was the kind of initial thought about kind of why you wanted to start it?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I have a background in working in radio and podcasts and not a background in live events back then at all. I know that I enjoyed working with funny people and funny podcasters, and I just saw, as the sort of overused phrase, a bit of a gap in the market. And I thought, well, hang on, there's a few people that I'd love to see live, all under one roof, all over the same, time. And I reached out to some, I would probably call them legacy podcasters now, people like Birthday Girls and Pappies and Trusty Hogs, and these people that got involved from year one and were well up for doing it and understood what we were trying to do. And it just happened. And, it was just a sort of mad creative idea, and it was just a balding man, a balding boy at that point. Now I consider myself a man, and a Canva account and a dream, and here we are. And I just think it is a great example of just sometimes you can overthink an idea or actually be talked down from it, or committees often can be the sort of opposite of what you want with creativity. And I'm a big fan of, actually, if it still feels like, if I have an idea at 3 a.m. middle of the night and it feels mad and brilliant and exciting, if it's still there in my brain 2 days later, it's a goer. It's something. So I think I'm a big believer in trust your creative instincts. And it's just gone from there, really, where there wasn't a comedy podcast festival. There's obviously tons and tons of comedy festivals and fringes and Leicester comedy festivals and Camden and Brighton and Bristol. A few podcast festivals back then. London Podcast Festival, obviously. What else did we have back then? Not loads. I suppose America's a bit more done that. We didn't have crossed wires back then. So there was more of a space back then for a podcast festival. There's lots of podcast awards, but not really a festival. And so I just sort of put down the flag, again, waited to see if anyone would sue me and say, no, we were the first comedy podcast festival, and no one did. And like we say, now we call ourselves a festival of funny podcasts, just to keep it slightly broader. But it was just an idea, and I thought, well, let's make it happen. and it did really. And I think it was a COVID idea, and it just sort of took me a couple of years, moving jobs, setting up Giddy Aunt Comedy, which is a production company, and just sort of getting a few ducks in a row before actually pulling the trigger. And I actually, two of the biggest supporters, I suppose, were the Bedford in Balham, specifically Becky, who runs the Bedford in Balham, which is this absolutely stunning venue with a sort of Shakespearean theatre in the middle of it. And that does a lot of the heavy lifting, because people go, wow, it's a proper festival and it's beautiful. And actually, it's just the Bedford is beautiful. And then obviously Craig and Goldie over at Adalicious, who now are a very, very successful podcast company, have merged with Audio Boom, but back then was sort of fairly new, and decided to throw a bit of money at it as well, which just helped cover costs in that year one, and they've supported it ever since. So without those the buy-in from those people and companies, we wouldn't really be where we are today. And
so you said it's comedy, funny podcasts. Was there a particular reason you kind of stayed around that area, or kind of went for that area? Is it just that, it doesn't seem too big of a leap to see comedians or people being funny on stage?
Why a festival? I think because I think everyone likes laughing, and you're absolutely right. There's a long legacy of going out and watching stuff on stage that makes you laugh. So I suppose you're right, that especially when Pappies, I mean, they've been doing it for donkey's years, and their live shows are not just a live recording, they're almost a format. Well, they are a format in their own right, kind of thing. So I think what you get with comedians in particular, or funny people who are doing their podcast live, they bring that energy and audience involvement and audience engagement and jokes and improv that other shows, potentially not sort of genre, ones that, let's say you see a business podcast live, it will probably be a live taping of it or a live recording of it, and there'll be obviously moments of levity. But I think having funny people, it's not a big leap for them to do live podcasts, and they get it. They've done, especially with comedians, they've done Edinburgh Fringes and where's the one in Southwold? I was going to say Latitude. They've done that. They know what they're doing. They're turning up for an hour and being entertaining and holding a microphone. It's not, like I say, it's not a big leap. So I just wanted to bring them all together, under an umbrella. I mean, back in 2020, at one point it's going to be called Compod Fest, as in Comedy Podcast Festival, which just sounds like compost, really. So I'm glad I didn't go down there. And I think, again, it was a 3 a.m. idea that, hang on, cheerful and earful rhyme, and I'm a big fan of a pun or a rhyme to hang your sort of whole brand off. And despite Ed Gamble a couple of years ago saying it was a shit name on the Radio X show, I think it's quite a fun name, and it sums up what it is. It's just an opportunity to see your favourite funny people live, as well as discovering new shows, and that's important as well. We want people to discover new shows, and that the same goes with partners. When partners get involved, for me, it's not about trying to just make money and slap their logo on the website. We want them to work proactively with the podcasters. And Podomedy, one of the smaller networks, they have hoovered up tons of podcasts from the festival over the years onto their network, and that works really nicely, as have Adalicious. They signed Desert Island Dicks in year one after seeing them live, and I was like, wow, I mean, talk about return on investment.
It's almost like, at least for the artist, like a kind of a free fringe on their side. Obviously then that places more risk on you, but was that, again, that kind of openness and that kind of ethos behind what you wanted to do from it?
Yeah, I think because it's never been my day job, and because it probably never will be in a nice way, or do I want it to be, it means that I don't have to focus on making as much money as possible. And the downside of that is that it doesn't make me as much money as possible. But the upside is that it's a very fun atmosphere where we can, in the UK, all acts get 80% of their ticket sales, which is probably one of the biggest splits that they'll be able to get in any sort of festival environment. And that's whether you're doing a 30-seater venue, at the Bedford for your first ever live show, or whether you're doing, a headline sold out show at the Clapham Grand to the best part of 800. We keep that same split, and that's really, really important. Where, for me, I work with a bunch of freelancers and basically creative friends who I trust and know over the years, and all of them do it for the love, not the money, and I'll try and pay them as much as possible. But I don't pay myself. They probably get paid way under market rate, but they just enjoy being part of the fun. So I think it's really important for me that there's no point shows joining the festival and performing if they could just go to the venue and do a live show themselves for a better rate. I would never want a festival's cut to get in the way, and that's what we're doing. Like, for example, in the US, the cuts there, the festival's not taking any cut of those tickets, because what the venue does and their normal split with performers in the venue, we're just keeping that, and we're just having to, sink those costs because it's just a good, cool, exciting expansion.
Say something like the Clapham Grand. Obviously, that's a big venue, and they're not going to let you have it. Just try your best. We'll see how many tickets you sell. I mean, how difficult is that? I mean, are they kind of almost like a partner within this?
Yeah, no, that is a good way of putting it. And whilst they're not quite that, I mean, Ali, who runs the Clapham Grand, he also runs Hoopla Music Festival. He's done a fantastic job, and their whole team and their ethos up and down of it is they've turned it into, they call it, I think, a palace of modern variety. So they've sort of moved the dial away from it being sticky floors full of Australians drinking till 3 a.m. And now the Clapham Grand is full of brunches and wrestling and conferences and restoration and history and live podcasts. So they understood and understand what we were trying to do with the festival. They understood that shows of a certain ilk aren't going to get out of bed for a venue that's 130 seats at the Bedford. So they get that what we're doing is we have an afternoon. We're able to, hire the Clapham Grand for an afternoon and put on as many, headliners, normally 3, as we can back to back. And that makes it financially viable for us and for them and for everyone, really, as well as us chucking all of the festival branding on it and all of the backdrops and all of our sort of marketing stuff. So, it is a hire arrangement, but it is a very generous hire arrangement, and one that's based on 2, 3, 4 years of working together. And I'm WhatsApping Ali at the Grand saying, can we do this, can we do that? So yeah, I think partnership's the right word for it, because they understand what we're trying to do and to build, and it's really, every year we kick off at the Grand with our headline shows before sort of decamping down the road to Balham for the bread and butter.
As a festival, it's got that kind of festival vibe, and similarly, I've talked to loads of people who are at the Edinburgh Fringe, and it's got a very similar kind of feel. I mean, in terms of logistics, how hard is that, where you've got maybe a 50-minute show and then the next show starts 10, 15 minutes later? I mean, has that become easier over time? Have you got into a rhythm on those kind of things, or is it just manic every single time you go?
Well, when we're in the Bedford, which is our festival hub, in the main area, we give ourselves an hour between shows. So when we're going on the Saturdays and Sundays, we're going 1 p.m, 3 p.m, 5 p.m, 7 p.m. kind of thing. So even if a show runs longer than an hour, because they're all scheduled to be ideally an hour, we have best part of 30, 35 minutes to turn the room over, to turn it cabaret style or theatre style, depending on, that's pretty manageable, and that's, you don't pull your hair out. What we do pull a hair out about is the upstairs room, the private dining room, which we turn into our listen up stage, is when we want to fit in and give a platform to as many first-time performers or indie shows as humanly possible. So that is when we kick off at midday and have shows until 9, 10 p.m, where the turnover is 15 minutes. So a show will start at 12, finish at 1, and then the next show is at 1:15. So that is a case of, we have to sort of almost pull the mics away from the performers and say, right, piss off, no offence, next lot, come on, piss on, no offence. So, but that really lends itself to a really fun community, slightly mad environment. It's brilliant. And you've got shows who are all guesting on each other's, and it's just performers tumbling over each other. And I think that stops it from being a sterile conference centre-esque kind of festival. We want it, it's a podcast festival, and it's a funny festival, and we want people grabbing pints quickly and coming upstairs and going in the wrong room and interrupting, and it's slightly mad. It's and we want it to be, I think.
And obviously, it's kind of grown over the years, bigger and bigger, more dates, more podcasts. But do you find kind of, now you've built, for want of better terms, you've built a brand, you've built the awareness, does selling tickets and all the rest of it, does that become easier now, do you think?
I think yes and no. I always say to people that the best marketing tool is word of mouth. So if you go to a nice restaurant, you'll say, go to this restaurant, and people will trust you. So we can post on Instagram and LinkedIn or wherever as much as we want, but people are going to want to see their favourite show live. The biggest ticket seller is a loyal, lovely audience, whether that's, again, they're doing their first time show, or the Clapham Grand where we have Lateral with Tom Scott and you're selling sort of 500 plus tickets. People want to see their favourite people in a room. They don't really care what they're doing. Yeah, they're doing their live podcast, but they just want to see Tom Scott in a room, or they just want to see the last ever Trusty Hogs show, So it's not even on size of audience. If you've got 100 listeners, but all of them want to buy your T-shirt, subscribe to your Patreon, and go to your live show, then that's brilliant. So I think we're lucky that there's a real love and loyalty to funny podcasts and entertaining ones like that, where we facilitate the live shows, we do our best with promotion, but I reckon it's the shows more than anything that are doing the heavy lifting. And I think that what happens then also is the crossover and the guest booking. Like, I do my best to book shows and people that I like and trust, but we've just got the flyers printed. We've got Brett Goldstein turning up and Nish Kumar turning up. I haven't booked them. They've been booked to do show, and I can do my very best, and they'll go, no thanks, but then they just get a WhatsApp from one of their comedian friends, and they're like, yeah, all right. So Nish Kumar's, finishing off the whole festival. That's brilliant. That's really exciting. I mean, similarly, for 2 years, we've tried to book one of my favourite podcasts, The Weekly Planet, which is an Australian sort of show. They're Australian. They talk about movies and films and comic books and TV shows and blah, blah, blah. Try and book them. They go, no, thanks. They don't really want to. And then they always end up doing the festival anyway, because they get booked on the Australian dates. So I'm, when I see them in just under a month, I'll be like, come on, guys, why don't you just respond to one of the emails? Just do it, kind of thing. So I think ticket sales, people are just happy to want to see their favourite shows. And then the whole point of the festival is that you sort of stick around and discover new ones. And maybe you wander upstairs and just try out something different,
And we were talking earlier, I was kind of saying that podcasting now is becoming more and more of a visual thing. Obviously, for the people in the audience, it's incredibly visual. You're there looking at it. Do you see many or any of these events either being live streamed or recorded or any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, a few years ago we live streamed the London ones. Last year we live streamed in the Melbourne shows because our partners over there, they're called Humdinger. They were called Stupid Old Studios, but video production is their bag. It's their business. So when I use the word live stream for them, and that's not doing it justice, it was basically like a multi-camera TV production that was then live streamed. So absolutely yes, but we're not live streaming the UK this time around. I think the US and Australia shows are, just because we don't have the in-house capabilities. We worked with Next Up Comedy a couple of years ago to help facilitate that. But yeah, we're well up for it. This year, what we are doing in the UK is we're working, again, this is a really good example of a partnership with Podshop. So Podshop do studio, they've got their own studios, and they do video podcast production, as normal podcast production, but they also really specialize in video, and that they're coming along and filming some of the shows for a massively discounted rate. I think they're actually losing money on it, but just doing a 3-camera filming, and we've had loads of uptake from our performers going, yes please, because they know the value of getting it filmed and putting it out like on Patreon or similar for their audiences. So yeah.
So you're talking about having the festival in Australia and New York as well. What kind of surprised me a bit is that they are all very similar times. It's not like, you've split them out across the year. And it can be
that would be the sensible thing, Dan, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Nice and disciplined, and a bit of a break in between. They're all pretty much happening at the same kind of time.
Yeah, they are.
What was the thinking behind that?
The thinking behind that was thinking. Well, firstly, selfishly, I wanted to go to them, so I was like, well, actually, they're just sort of facilitating my, airplane travel. But the thinking behind that is, it's all part of the same thing. It's all part of Cheerful Earful. Doesn't matter where they are in the world. They're all part of this festival, of funny podcasts. So we reached out to Stupid Old Studios, as they formerly were known. They're now known as Humdinger, because for the Melbourne shows for last year, our Australia debut, because I think Australia and UK comedy podcasts, probably more than any other genre or countries, are very similar, and I could get my head around, wrap my head around the comedy industry and who was doing what and this, that and the other, and we were just essentially able to copy and paste what we do in the UK over there. And their comedy scene is very Melbourne centric. And again, we partnered with Humdinger, who were just able to be the boots on the ground and to be that trustworthy people going, no, this is a real thing, come and do it. And so I often say that I think the first year of Melbourne shows, the calibre of guests was probably up there with like year 3 of the UK shows, just because it's so concentrated, and they were just humding and did a great job of sort of helping us book people. So we had these really big names. I mean, the T-shirt behind me is signed from the first year in Australia, just because we had some amazing podcasters there. But it was a very, very similar, I think, sense of humour and scene, and so I just wanted to copy and paste it in Australia. And because the Melbourne International Comedy Festival, every sort of whenever that is spring, our time spring, so many UK shows go over there. So this is a sort of nice other end of the year thing to happen in Melbourne. Now, at the moment, we haven't taken any UK shows over. It is Australia-based funny podcasts, comedy podcasts, but it just works really nicely. There's nothing like that out there. Obviously, people do their podcasts as part of the comedy festival, the Melbourne one, but there's nothing like this. So we say, well, let's do Cheerful Earful. The US was this year's a bit more of a sort of proof of concept. Will it work? Does it work? Because it's obviously, the US are, podcasts on steroids. They've got conferences every other week. They know they've got their shit together, to put it politely. And they've got the New York Comedy Festival, I think, just before. So it's very, very busy. But we've got 3 days booked in. Some of the shows have sold out 2 nights in a row, and that's their first ever live show. So we know there's space for it. We've had people say, can we do the 2026 New York dates, which is great. So there is an appetite there. And I think down the line, we will look at, sort of unofficially, we do this now, but sort of officially, just sort of franchising it out a bit and just saying, look, here's our colour codes and our branding and our microphone muffs and our T-shirts. Go and run it how you want, because the guys in Melbourne already put their spin on it and already put their certain, like I said, their live stream is just amazing. And because of the weather, there's more of an outdoor element. There's beers on tap and all this kind of thing, and a bit more of a classic festival vibe. So it's just really exciting to see this, like say, global but grassroots expansion.
You were saying, kind of the primary way of selling tickets is word of mouth, and people want to see particular acts. But have you done much in terms of either digital advertising or PR and those kind of things? Doing much of kind of sponsor posts on Instagram and Facebook and all the rest of it?
No, I don't think I've ever taken out not for the festival, because if a show's not selling, we will get behind it and support it and do what we can to get bums on seats. Be that, I don't know, working with a sort of ticketing partner literally to get free tickets, or we'll just support people. But I think it kind of, for me, this is selfishly, I think it defeats the point. I mean, if we're not selling, then what's the point of us paying to get, I really want it to be this like organic awareness around it. And, I reached out to a big UK-based PR company, and last year I think, and said, what would we have to do to get some, to get newspaper write-ups and all this kind of thing, and they quoted their absolute bare minimum, and that was sort of the entire Giddy Aunt Comedy bank account. And I thought, well, I can't do that. We don't have enough revenue to justify spending a lot of money on PR. So at the moment, it's still this sort of start-uppy, sort of word of mouth energy, despite it being global. But nothing against paying for Instagram adverts, but don't need to at the moment. If a show's not selling, we will support and hug them and do what we can. And weirdly, if 2 or 3 people turn up, well, just treat it like a live, a podcast recording where you've got a couple in the audience. It's not, no great shakes. But PR, we work with sort of the usual comedy press, like lovely Zoe at, I never say it right, LMAO Nays, I'll say, and the British Comedy Guide, and then who else, Pod Bible and all that lot. And then we're also doing some stuff with Sundays PR, who I think they do UK and US, and we're just sort of doing a nice contra deal there. So, seeing, can we get any more bums on seats, and just chucking their logo in the brochure and bigging them up. But no, we don't do any paid for stuff because we don't have the money to, and because we sort of rely on the goodwill of the sort of podcasters and partners as well to spread the word and get people there.
Yes, I guess that's one good thing by having so many in a concentrated area. It's not just there's just one show on one night, you have to sell it. But you've got, talking earlier about, I think you're saying like about the 18th of October, where there's God knows how many events. But then anyone who's promoting theirs is promoting the festival on that day, and so you may go to the 3 o'clock, and then you might think, I like the 1 o'clock or the 5 o'clock, and so there's going to be a lot of
absolutely
promotion.
Absolutely, yeah. It's yeah, it's maybe we should be doing some more PR, but we're a small outfit, and like I say, it's not my day job, and it's just about, I think, spending money on the right things. Really, for me, that I'd rather get all of the shows in the printed program or all of their names on the flyers and get lots of those printed as well as posters than spending it on PR. I'd rather get their names out there rather than Cheerful Earful out there, if that makes sense.
Yes. And so, obviously, as well as Cheerful Earful, you mentioned in the intro about the Golden Lobes, which I think is a fantastic name. I don't think I gamble to think that one's shit. I think that's a great one. Yes. Did you just kind of think, well, an awards fits as a kind of nice complement to the festival?
Yeah, that was exactly it. I mean, like I said, I've worked in radio and audio and sort of podcasting for a decade. And I've been to many, many awards and edited awards and been there myself. And I have always wanted to do them, but I never quite knew how to do it. And I wanted to do it in a certain cheerful, earful way. And I think it was literally in November. Again, it was a 3 a.m. idea. I just woke up thinking, oh my God, the Golden Lobes. And I used to be... Maybe this is why I've done everything ear-based, but I used to be bullied in primary school for the size of my ears. And I think that has clearly led on a bit. Basically, they're big earlobes rather than big ears. Maybe I was thinking about it, and I thought, oh, the Golden Lobes is... And it was just, I just wrote loads of notes down on my phone. I just let my brain go for it. And the point of it was, not the point of it, but I wanted it to be affordable. So rather than £60 per category or whatever, it's 25 quid to enter as many awards as you want. It's we don't care. And rather than 15 minutes worth of audio, it's 5 minutes of audio. So it could be one long clip. Rather than, because I've been there when you're spending hours trying to edit an awards entry and you're actually being distracted from your day job and it's not fun. It's like, well, actually, a celebration of your best works should probably be fun. And we wanted it to be accessible as well in terms of, it wasn't just for comedy podcasts, it was we had best blooper or best tangent or some stuff like if you had a business podcast or anything, health and wellbeing one, but you went off on a hilarious rant about something, we wanted a category for you, as well as stuff like funniest show or best indie show. So that was the base of it. And then again, in this sort of grassroots way, we looked at how much our awards platforms, and they were minimum $5,000 if you wanted to use awards software and set it up. And I thought, well, stuff that. We've worked for years with Podlife Events. Theo from Podlife, who is a live podcast ticketing platform, really, really good. And I sort of WhatsApped him in November saying, I want to do this. I want to do it next year. Could we repurpose Podlife Events in the sort of back end of your website and turn it into an awards platform? And he went, give me a week and I'll look at it. And he came back and went, probably. Can you give me any money? And I went, probably, but not much. And we just went from there. And we were able to launch in February with it culminating in May. And I thought it was going to be a fun, marketing exercise, brand extension. You've got Golden Lobes Q2, you've got the Cheerful Earful, the festival in Q4. But actually, the uptake of the Lobes, we had household name podcasters, big BBC ones, Frank Skinner, as well as first-time indie shows, all submitting. It was brilliant. And again on the awards night, I didn't want it to be a boring, stale, clapping, long speeches, all of this kind of thing. I wanted it to be much more of a sort of cabaret show, people coming and going, not a piss take of the winners, but sort of a piss take of the industry and doing funny, silly stuff. I mean, we had Mark Silcox, a brilliant comedian, pretending to be Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, and then becoming on again, pretending to be Gary Lineker, and he just looks nothing like Gary Lineker. So very tongue-in-cheek and silly, but the night itself was a celebration and a bit of a party. So for me, that was really fun. Again, it was held at the Clapham Grand, and they were very kind to sort of host and partner with us on that. And we've got, fun plans for 2026. And it was just a very natural, come perform as part of the festival and then come win an award if you can as part of the Golden Lobes.
I think, it's been a common theme about the things you talk about, and from what I see on others as well, is that kind of community within, whether it's music or whatever, it kind of really helps. But you can do nice things for other people, and it also works well for yourself. It's a rising tide lifts all boats and all that.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah,
it definitely has that kind of feel to it.
Yeah, no, it was really nice, and we had someone unprompted emailed afterwards saying, "I really like the effort to connect podcasters and partners," because afterwards I was saying I was just doing a endorsement of the partners. And I was talking about like Orphonic, who do really good AI post production on audio quality. Really, I've used it myself; it's fantastic. And I basically put in the email, said, right, use these guys. I've used it myself. When an audio recording has gone weird, you can get them to fix it. And then I had people email me going, what was it? And I was like, what was it called? I went Orphonic. Oh yeah. And then a week later saying, oh, that was absolutely brilliant, kind of thing. Blah blah blah. And in our highlights video, yeah, you've got tables where you've got top tier comedians and famous people, and then first timers, and the fact that they can afford to come to the awards night. Again, we try to keep it as affordable as possible. We kept it as 30 quid all in to come to the night, whereas I know that the British Podcast Awards are £90 minimum if you want to just be in the room and breathe the same oxygen as everyone else, and you sort of think, oh dear, that's not particularly accessible. I mean, 30 quid even and of itself is not that accessible. We're looking at actually lowering the price for 2026. So I think you're absolutely right. We want everyone to be in the same boat together, really, because, loads of shows have grown in the time that I've known them, and it's just really exciting to see.
And then another string to your bow is Giddy Aunt. So you've got kind of all these kind of things that are reasonably closely related, but, kind of separate areas. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about Giddy Aunt and how that came about and the kind of things you're involved with there.
Yeah, I mean, so Giddy Aunt Comedy is the production company behind all of this. It's sort of the legitimate outfit, I suppose, the literal sort of limited company, VAT registered proper thing. It was set up in 2021 to basically be a vehicle for any mad ideas that I had, and I started by doing a couple of podcasts as part of it. One was parody Boris Johnson, using the Twitter account Parody Boris Johnson, and then the other was the amazing Jackie Weaver. So we did a series of Jackie Weaver's podcast when she was a thing, and that was really fun. And then that sort of, it just petered out, and it was difficult to make podcasts regularly, as you'll know, and lots of people will know. And then in the anniversary of when Jackie Weaver went viral for her parish council meeting, we organised a live event. Giddy Aunt Comedy, it was the first sort of live event we did, was a sort of comedians parish council, and we had Paul Sinner there and Susie Ruffle, and that was sort of me properly dipping my foot into it, and it went well, and it made a bit of money, and it was received well, and I was like, that was really fun. And I've sort of been in and out of comedy and performance and stuff, looked from the side of the stage for a while, for years, and it was just a really fun, addictive moment. And so then Giddy Aunt Comedy has just sort of bobbed along in the background, again, like I say, just to help make mad ideas happen. So Brian Blessed, we've done a couple of 2 or 3 boat cruises with Brian Blessed called Overboard with Brian Blessed, which was great fun because people just love being in the room with him. And we'd written, the first one we did on the Thames, we'd written this beautiful script about all of the facts about this, that, and the other when we passed them on the river, and he sort of had the piece of paper and went, what the fuck is this? And just literally threw it out the window and then just started telling stories for 2 hours. So that was a quick learning curve. So that was it. Then we did Louis Theroux. I was friends with Josh Berry, good old comedian, viral impressionist as well. He does the best Louis Theroux impression, and we sort of convinced Louis Theroux to do an event called Tui Theroux, where Josh interviewed him as Louis Theroux, and Louis Theroux was there, and it was just getting the buy-in from a very famous person to do a silly idea, which I love. So Giddy Aunt Comedy, we say we make funny business, and so now we mainly, the time is spent putting on the festival, putting on the Lobes, but we'll still do tours. There's Matt Stewart is an Australian comedian and podcaster. He's touring the UK at the moment. We're doing Andrew White from Trusty Hogs and other stuff fame. He's touring as well under Giddy Aunt. And then also we put on live podcasts. We put on The Rest Is History and The Rest Is Politics. The Rest Is Politics' first ever live show was Giddy Aunt Comedy. And what I didn't do was get Goalhanger to sign a document saying, we promise to stick by you, Giles, through thick and thin. So now they're doing the O2. And I think, oh dear, that could have been, my cash cow. But never mind. Good old Tony and everyone over at Goalhanger, they're smashing it. But yeah, we just sort of help facilitate mad ideas and fun live shows, really, yeah.
Yes, I came along to that, the Josh Berry and Louis Theroux.
Oh, good.
Yeah, his impression is unreal of Louis. It was kind of, I think it was weird in Louis out, obviously.
Yeah.
I think everyone else in the room as well. It was superb.
Yeah, we're still trying to get Louis to do another one of those, but obviously his diary gets booked up in a fair bit in advance, which is understandable.
Yes, and he's obviously now a king of podcasting as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Obviously, you've got London and now international, but is there a view to do other Cheerful Earful festivals within the UK?
Yeah, well, we were looking at earlier this year doing the Ear Canal, which would essentially be a sort of regional tour with venues that I know and like across the UK. So the big difference in Leicester is good, and then also Monkey Barrel in Edinburgh, they're an absolutely amazing team. So we were looking at doing within the festival dates, again, to make it accessible. Excuse my language, everything fucking happens in London. So it's like, well, why not actually go to the places where people are and podcasters are? Now, we were going to do the Ear Canal, but again, I'd run out of capacity. And essentially, we needed a partner just to bung a few £100 or £1,000 to help make it happen. We just couldn't find that in time. So that's still on the table, and that would have really helped with our accessibility. So it's not just London-based. Because like poor old Sam Lake, for example, is coming down from Edinburgh to London to perform as part of Cheerful. Now, it'd be really nice to be able to have that next year and have more regional stuff like that. And then Golden Lobes for 2026, we're looking at I don't like the phrase bursary scheme because bursary is a bit traditional and safe. So we're calling it London on a Wednesday. So that will be a scheme where if you are nominated and you live outside the M25, you can come for free to the festival to try and help offset any costs, because everything is a bit too London centric for my liking.
Because yes, I've spoken to some people up in Manchester. I spoke to quite a lot of Scottish comedians on the pod, and there's an excellent scene up there. So I think there's definitely an appetite for that kind of thing. Yeah,
100%. I know. It would be. Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah.
Thanks to Giles for coming on the podcast. You can find out more details in the show notes about the festival, which starts in London on the 12th of October. If you enjoyed this, check out our other episodes of a variety of comedians, musicians, authors and others in creative industries. Thanks for listening.